All right, welcome back in. It's Jonah Javad, Michelle Montaigne from WFAA Sports. We're still kind of breaking down this Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis trade. You heard from Nico Harrison and Mavs head coach Jason Kidd. That was a snippet from their press conference that happened at about 1 o'clock Central Time today. They're out in Cleveland. The Mavs play the Cavaliers here in about 25 minutes. Joe Trahan, our lead sports anchor for WFAA, is in Cleveland. He asked Nico some questions earlier today at the press conference. He's now looking for interviews as well, so we'll have more to report later tonight on our shows on WFAA as also WFAA Plus. But Michelle, I feel like there's so many different branches of this trade that we have to kind of peel or have to go one by one on. So
Yeah.
before we went to the press conference there about 5 minutes ago, you were kind of mentioning the relationship between Lakers GM Rob Pelinka and Mavs GM Nico Harrison. They've known each other for about 20 years. That this deal went in secret for about 3 to 4 weeks, and nobody knew about it. Allegedly, nobody knew about it. Jason Kidd didn't find out until moments before it happened. And Luka Doncic had not requested a trade, seemed content in Dallas. When he found out the news, he was stunned, reportedly. I've spoken to people of Luka's family back in Slovenia. They are all shocked. So no one had any sort of inclination that this would be something that would happen. And it happened late on a Saturday night. Since then, Luka has unfollowed the Mavericks on Instagram, I believe X or Twitter as well. And that is it's the stepping stones now to revenge Luka. The Mavs are now going to have to deal with the revenge factor of a guy they all love. Mavs fans loved Luka, and now they're going to have to face him multiple times a year, perhaps in the playoffs. And it's going to be hard because so many of these people are still going to love him, even though he's going to be playing for the Lakers. And that's another part of why this trade was so diabolical is you trade him to another team in the Western Conference, a team that you compete against. And a team
one of the most polarizing franchises in sports.
A team you're going to be competing against for years in theory. So it's so mind-boggling. And Nico Harrison has earned some credit. The Kyrie trades worked out. PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, that helped get the Mavs to the NBA Finals last year. But I think there is something to be said about overconfidence, and that this deal was really like a Lone Ranger type of situation, and him working with his old buddy, behind the scenes to get this deal done. And from what he told us today, it was like, what did you think about, when their discussions with Rob Pelinka was, what do you think about this? Are you serious? Yeah, maybe I am. And to me, it felt like, I don't know if you do fantasy football or not, but it felt like when one of the bad teams in your league proposes to trade their best player to one of the better teams in the league, and the better team has to be like, I'm not so sure. Let me think on it, and then come back 5 hours later, and it's like, yeah, you know what? I'll do the deal. But you have to fake hardball to make the deal. And
you have $20 on the line versus
if
$350 million.
Yeah, it's serious. If you're the Lakers, how is you get that call? How are you not immediately? Yes, we'll do the deal. I mean, it makes no sense. And with all due respect, I get the whole we want to be a defensive first team. This is a Mavericks team that went to the NBA Finals, yes, but also got their butts whooped in the NBA Finals by a team that is defense first, one of the best two-way team in the NBA, because the Celtics were able to make offense out of their defense.
Right.
And so I think part of that is this, do we just we'd roll out the same type of offense and hope for a different result? Maybe that doesn't work out, and then you're kind of just, spinning your wheels. But that's just sort of playing devil's advocate here. When you have a top 5 player in the NBA, you do whatever you can to keep him, especially for what he does for your additional revenue and ticket sales and merchandise and fandom outside of the Dallas Metroplex. I mean, he's one of the most popular players globally. And they're just throwing that all away just in hopes of some better defense from a guy who's 31 and always injured. Michelle, I'm sorry. I'm running on very little sleep. I know you are as well. But Nico's press conference, what were some of the bigger takeaways that we haven't got to yet.
Well, I mean, even just touching on some of the things you mentioned, Revenge Luka was literally one of my like initial thoughts. When the Lakers and Mavs play on February 25th, I'm scared for what we're gonna see out of him. Like we've seen a 73-point game out of Luka before. You know, now that he's wearing purple and gold, who knows what we're gonna see out of him. When he returns on April 9th to Dallas, playing against the Mavericks in the AAC for the first time. I was wondering this when I was at the American Airlines Center around 2:30 this morning, looking at fans who were out there protesting because they were so distraught by the news. And I legitimately had the thought of like, ticket prices for that game will probably be the most expensive that we see all season. But also, will they? Because are people going to be like, identity crisis? Am I here like rooting against Luka, or am I going to wear like there's no way people are putting on Lakers jerseys. It's just going to be so interesting to see how this plays out, to use Nico's terms, in the short term and in the quote unquote 3 to 4 year long term. That was really interesting to me to hear him not only identify the long term in his mind as 3 to 4 years from now, but then to also laugh about the fact and use the quote, hey, I don't know, me and Jay might have already buried ourselves 10 years from now. That was, again, I'm trying not to read too much into this just being his demeanor and his personality and how he carries himself all the time. Because like you've said, so far the track record has kind of spoken for itself. And Kyrie is also an all-NBA player. I mean, we're not talking about just the PJ Washingtons of the world, but
right.
I mean, even Kyrie doesn't have the same leverage, especially when he was coming to Dallas at that point in his career, that Luka has at 25 years old. I also think what's interesting, at the end of that press conference, Jason Kidd said he and Luka had quote unquote missed each other, so he hasn't had the opportunity to talk to him yet. You mentioned kind of the revenge, Luka, the unfollowing of the Mavericks accounts on social media already. I saw a quote from the Dallas Morning News that GM Nico Harrison said he was asked, had he communicated with Luka, and he said, quote, my guess is he probably doesn't want to talk to me. So they likely won't have any communication at this point. He hasn't talked to his former head coach. I brought this up late last night, but we think about these players as, they're up on a pedestal. And I think we've heard Luka described as untouchable several times before because of the unique talent that he is. This trade is certainly, shocking and everything from a basketball standpoint, but from a person standpoint as well, to be Luka in this moment where this information, this news has literally taken the world by storm, and to feel the rejection, almost the insult of, oh, the team that I've given my everything to for the last 7 years that was supposedly being built around me is willing to just literally ship me off based off of a one-on-one conversation between two guys, despite the ripple effects that this type of move would have. It's got to feel, at the human level, just hurtful to a certain extent. And I just wonder if Luka ever needed more motivation to be an exceptional player. I think he's probably got some. The chip on his shoulder probably grew a little bit more. And the last thing I'll say before I shut up is it was really interesting to me that that Nico Harrison described getting, I think it was a unique unicorn is how he described the opportunity to land Anthony Davis here in Dallas. And I think you could easily describe the guy you sent away as a unique unicorn as well.
Yeah, he was. It's just tough. I mean, I think for basketball fans that just love watching basketball, I mean, Luka was one of one. I mean, he is one of the most fun players to watch. And The Mavs will and have said that the reason for this trade was part the culture fit, and we've heard for years about Luka's talking with the refs, not getting back on defense. His effort level and compete level on defense is not where they wanted it to be, and that there were a lot of times last year and years past where he became a defensive liability, and teams would just hunt out Luka on defense and attack him. The Celtics did that sometimes in the NBA Finals, but Luka was the only guy you could go to for a bucket when you needed it the most. Mm-hmm. He hit the game winner against the T-Wolves in the Western Conference Finals. I was there that night. That shut up the entire arena in the Twin Cities. Then in the NBA Finals, when every single player on the Mavericks goes to Boston and can't hit the side of a barn, Luka averages 30 points in the TD Garden. The only one who can score. He lives for the big moments.
25 years old.
He's a big time player. Yeah,
second all time in points in playoff per game.
And with all
and he's
those
25
and all those conditioning issues, and he was still able to do all of that. Now they can position it how they want, and we want to be a defensive first team. We had issues about conditioning. The other aspect to all of this is the contract.
Yes.
And Luka, because he was drafted by the Mavericks and he's past the 4-year mark with them, he's eligible for a supermax extension, which would have been, let me get the numbers right. It's 5 years, right? 5 years.
5 years. 345.
346 million. Would have been the largest contract in NBA history. Now that he has been traded, and it's not in his first 4 years in the league, traded after 4 years, he is not eligible for that supermax with the Lakers. So this deal takes off a bunch of money off the table for Luka. However, he can make a lot of that back, if not more, depending on what he signs his next deal to be, which will likely be probably a 3-4 year deal with a player option. And once he hits his 10 years of service in the NBA, he is eligible for 35% of the cap, and so his money will go through the roof. That's obviously assuming 3-4 years from now, Luka is still playing at a all-star, first, second team all NBA level. And there's a lot of great young talent in the NBA, but let's be honest, Luka's brand of basketball it's not like it's just built off athleticism. I mean, he could play until he's 40 based on as long as his body doesn't wear down on him, which is part of what went into this decision for the Mavericks. The injury concerns, the conditioning, and it just feels like they're rolling the dice and hoping they're right. But as Nico Harrison said in his press conference today, I mean, his quote was, "Time will tell if I'm right," and that's pretty much any trade. But this one, there's seems to be no redeeming qualities to it, especially with you don't even talk to your superstar about it. You don't even go to him and say, "Hey, man, we're thinking about trading you. What are your thoughts? Are you're good with that? Just want to give you that heads up and maybe open that dialogue." Maybe that gives him a wake-up call for conditioning, or maybe it at least positions you in a way where if you leak that Luka's on the block,
mm-hmm.
you can get way more in return. And I don't know what listen, Anthony Davis has been a great player in the NBA, but he has never reached Luka level elite. And he's also 31. And I feel like every year I get there's multiple messages throughout the season where it's Anthony Davis is headed to the locker room. It's always something with him. And so this whole concept of them being defensive first and him being a great two-way player is great in concept, but if he's not on the floor, what good does that do you if he's hurt?
Well, and how many teams win a championship each year? One. There's more to having fan buy-in than just winning a championship. Don't get me wrong. I understand the level of importance that holds and the level of, how you can cement your place in history that is determined by the number of trophies that you hoist. But at the same time, if you're not doing that every year, having a player like Luka is what basically every single franchise hopes that they're able to, get, or hopes that falls in their lap, once every 10, 15 years. How many times do we see top prospects or number one picks overall actually result in everything you hope them to be. You know, Cade Cunningham has been excellent. He's just now at 23 getting named an NBA All-Star for the first time. And it was, due to voting. And, it's just a 2029 first round draft pick that you hope hits. I mean, you mentioned the return for a player like this. It just doesn't, even listening to him today, that wasn't a question that was asked. I mean, we did only get 10 minutes with him before he was made unavailable. Again, this is all happening right before this afternoon game against Cleveland. So it's not like we had all the time in the world to ask him these questions. That one wasn't one of the ones really addressed by him. But you just have to think, even, Victor Wembanyama, right? Like, he still has growing to do. And for Luka to just kind of hit the ground running the way he did, to be at this stage in his career and at the age that he is and have all this, he's a 5-time NBA All-Star, 5-time NBA All-First Team player, and he's 25. That's as many All-Star nods as, or All-NBA First Team nods that Anthony Davis has, and he's 31. So I mean, you said it plain, like, there's really not a comparison between these two if you're looking at just like head to head. And as far as like almost the defense that Nico's using, that, we think defense wins championships. Okay, like, that is a valid argument. But when you have a player as unique as Luka, who, as you mentioned previously, is the face of a city. I mean, how much time is it going to take them to just, I don't know, redo the banners around the stadium, redo the billboards across the city? I mean, this guy was everywhere. And the fact that Nico said, I wrote this down, it was one of the things that really jumped out to me in this press conference. Nico was asked specifically as a follow-up question to some of his comments about the Supermax deal and getting in front of what could have been a tumultuous summer. He was asked, was there any indication to you that Luka wouldn't take the extension? Nico flat out says, no, not at all. Nothing verbally. So by all accounts, this is from national media and local media. By all accounts, Luka was happy to be in Dallas, and there was, at least externally, expectation that Luka would accept a deal to stay here in Dallas. And the fact that Nico said, yeah, no, there was no indication that he wouldn't sign an extension here, really makes you question, then why, and why this in return? I don't think
the reasons they're giving us, and there may be more to it going on behind the scenes that we don't know in the moment right now, but the reasons were, one, the conditioning, the injuries, the Supermax extension that they don't have to pay now. Also the fear
Culture.
of him opting out and going to another team on his own
Choice.
on his own, free will, and getting to kind of dictate that, because we see a lot of NBA superstars do that nowadays, and the team that has the superstar ends up holding the bag. And sure, I understand all that, but this was management malpractice to again, if you want to trade him. I don't actually get how you want to trade him, but if you decide you want to trade him, they did it in the worst possible way. I mean, every single thing they did is like the opposite of how they should have done it, how most well-run teams do things.
Yeah.
Speak with your superstar. You speak with your head coach. You kind of leak it out there, so you create a bidding war for this player that would be coveted by the majority of teams in the NBA and could give you a great return. Like, I don't know how much Nico Harrison loves Anthony Davis, but to just get AD at age 31 and 1 first-round pick in 2029, which is probably going to be a really low first-round pick, because the Lakers aren't tanking anytime soon. It's just the worst haul in return that you can possibly imagine, when there are mid-tier players getting 5 first-round picks in return. So the timing of it stinks. The return stinks. The short term, they can pitch it to us as being they're better in the short term. I'm not completely convinced of that, because this is a team that went to the NBA Finals last year. Long term, it's definitely not better. And Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison chuckled about that. They might not be here in 10 years. They might not be here in 2 years.
Yeah.
They might not be here in 1 year, depending on how all of this transpires. I am excited for April 9th when the Lakers come to Dallas, and presumably Luka's in the lineup for that one. It's going to be a movie. And, some part of me, and I know there are a lot of Mavs fans watching, some part of me hopes Luka scores 77 points.
Oh, my gosh. How poetic would that be?
I feel bad for the player, and I feel bad for Mavericks fans because I don't think any of them really deserved for how this went down. Not just that it went down, but how it went down. But here, coming up, we've got 5 minutes from now, Mavericks Cavaliers on channel 29 KFAA. We're the home for the Mavericks, baby. That's going to be an interesting game considering every above average player is out.
7 people are out. Yep.
Yikes. But tune into that. Maybe the Mavs will pull out a victory. But lastly, and I want to make this one point because we have spent the majority of our time talking about Luka Doncic and his ripple effect on the city and the team. Anthony Davis in his own right. I mean, there was a few years ago, he was a top 5 player in the NBA. And he's not far outside of the top 5 nowadays. The injury concerns notwithstanding, he is a impressive player. Gives you defense at the rim. He gives you defense on the perimeter with his length. Perennial contender for Defensive Player of the Year. And by bringing him to Dallas, and this is something that he had been talking to the Lakers about recently, was we need to bring another center to LA so I can play the power forward role. Well, that's what he'll play for the Mavs most of the time because they'll have Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively to man the 5. Yeah. And so now you got two big men, one on the perimeter, one down low, and AD is now able to kind of move around the perimeter and play the position he wants, the position he played when the Lakers won the title a handful of years ago. From a basketball sense, I get it. I mean, their starting lineup looks like it would work, assuming they all stay healthy. I still have concerns about depth and then needing more shot creators and ball handlers, but maybe it works out. But with all these teams coming up in the West, you got the Rockets and the Thunder. Memphis is good. I mean, it's just the West is loaded. And they're full of young teams. Spurs are coming up. They're going to come on. So at this point, you're the Mavericks. You're like, we probably got to win now because we're facing a rebuild pretty soon.
Yeah.
Which stinks. It stinks.
I mean, undoubtedly, AD is one of the game's best two-way big men. He can score, he can rebound, he can block shots, he can protect the paint, defend on the perimeter, etc. But I think the real question is, and this, like Nico said, time will tell us, is the risk of the Mavs parting ways with one of the NBA's most gifted offensive players, who finished third in MVP voting just last season, is close to being just a walking 30-point per game triple-double player. Is it going to be worth it letting him go to get what you got? Right now, I think everyone's initial reaction to that answer is not even just no, but heck no. But like we said,
it's one of the worst trades in sports history. I mean, unless they win the title, it's one of the worst, and they have to win the title for it to make sense. It's one of the worst trades in sports history. With that, on that bright note, Mavericks fans, I'm sorry. I know this is a rough Sunday for a lot of people because I love basketball. I love watching great basketball, and I love watching him play because it was art. And now I'll get to watch him play for a team that maybe knows what it's doing. Anyway, we are going to rewatch the Nico Harrison press conference that took place at just about 1 o'clock Central Time. Mavericks and Cavaliers getting ready to tip off in Cleveland. We're going to sign off for now, but you'll be hearing from us here on WFAA Plus in a handful of hours. And, of course, tune in tonight on WFAA. Over the air, as we'll have kind of more reaction, more insight and analysis into this blockbuster trade that Mavericks fans and us are really still trying to make sense of. So for Michelle Montaigne, I'm Jonah Javad. we're going to send it to the press conference from earlier this afternoon featuring Mavs GM Nico Harrison and head coach Jason Kidd.